Well, as Donald Trump's Republican shutdown proceeds through its third week with no end in sight, uh, masked agents sweeping citizens off of the streets. Uh, Today, we saw a video of ICE agents and federal agents in Portland detaining a man in a giraffe suit simply for speaking his mind. And in Washington, D.C., Trump's minion in the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, is embracing the spirit of Halloween this month, taking the three-ring circus that is his normal surroundings and really draping it with all of the spooky kind of designs and creepy goblins that we would expect this time of year. And you can see it in the ghost town that he has left his capital. And we saw that in a video with our guest today. So thrilled to be joined here on Legal AF with Court Accountability by the great representative from California, Eric Swalwell, who's walking through the Congress this week. It is a true ghost town. Representative, what is going on in the House of Representatives? I mean, you've been putting, I think, really amazingly important attention on the fact that your future colleague, Representative Grijalva, is being her swearing in is being withheld. She's the decisive vote on the production of these Epstein files. What's going on in your dysfunctional body of our government?
This is an Epstein shutdown. I mean, we are 15 days in, and to protect Donald Trump from the rest of us finding out how close he was to Jeffrey Epstein, the greatest child sex trafficker ever in American history, Mike Johnson has kept the Congress closed. And just so your viewers understand, Mike Johnson does not want the Epstein files to be released. And as Speaker of the House, he has a lot of power to stop that. But there's one way to get around that, and that's if a majority of the members of the House, which is 218, sign what's called a discharge petition. We have 217 signatures right now, including Republican signatures. Just about a month ago, a new Democrat was elected in the Phoenix suburbs, Adelita Grijalva, and Johnson has refused to swear her in. And not just refused to swear her in, he has kept the Congress closed. We've never been closed for this long outside of an August, summer recess. And you can only conclude that he's doing this to protect Donald Trump from a vote on the Epstein files. Because I've been told, talking to my Republican colleagues, that they are happy to be protected by Johnson right now on this. They don't want to take this vote. They know Trump doesn't want them to have to take this vote. But if they are forced to take this vote, that the majority of Republicans will vote to release the files, which would be embarrassing for Trump and would force a vote equally in the Senate and then put Trump in a position where he has to either release the files or veto them, which would essentially be a confession that he's tied to Epstein.
Incredible. And it's not like there's nothing going on, right? We've got the government is in full scale shutdown. I think obviously this was a result that in many respects, Trump himself and the Project 2025 apparatus behind him very much desired. I think they're using it very clearly as pretext, somebody like Stephen Miller as pretext for the unfurling of things like federal troops into our communities, the plans and the actions they have taken to gut the federal workforce, firing up to 10,000 federal workers. Thankfully, there was a lower court order today. But, this stuff is ongoing, happening now. Your colleagues must feel some obligation to respond to this. It seems like some of the frustration is also bubbling out around the Epstein files. I'm seeing more and more public statements from your Republican colleagues saying something's got to have to give here. How do you see this all playing out?
Yeah, the country's in crisis, as you said. Day 15 of shutdown. Today's the 15th of the month. Millions of people connected to the federal government or who work for the federal government, including our troops, are not going to be paid because Johnson and Trump will not open up government. They will not pay the troops. They run Congress, by the way. They run the Senate, the House, and of course the White House. They could do this all themselves. They won't do it. Healthcare premiums. So we are going into open enrollment on November 1. This is how most families receive their health insurance, either through their employer or through the Affordable Care Act and the marketplace where you would go. Democrats are asking not for a new program, not for additional spending, but to just keep in place the subsidies that have reduced the cost people spend on healthcare month over month. Republicans have taken that out. We're saying we will vote to open up your government if you put in place these health insurance subsidies. Republicans are refusing to do that. And yes, as you alluded to, Donald Trump has declared war on America's cities. This is a misuse of the military, but also unconstitutional, as he is finding out court after court. And worst of all, for Donald Trump, because I think at the end of the day, his Achilles heel is that he wants to be liked. It is highly, highly unpopular.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're going to start to see, right? As the real world implications of the shutdown start to be felt by citizens, and I think increasingly they are. I think it explains that that lack of patience from your Republican colleagues to get moving on this. Something is going to have to give. And I think what we're seeing is increasingly manifestations of that kind of breakdown. It's so interesting that you bring up the healthcare, which obviously has been the thing that Democrats have decided to have this fight about. And as we approached what we knew was going to be a fight over a potential shutdown, a lot of us in our community, outside advocates, people watching this stuff really closely, were thinking about what would make sense for Democrats to say was the bright line here. There's so much offensive abuse of our constitutional order, of our communities, of our freedoms. How could you actually make a deal with an administration as they continue to, act as if, the 14th Amendment, for example, doesn't protect birthright citizenship? But even in taking such a sort of you could argue a low-hanging fruit, something that we all want, something that Republicans have said that they are for, affordable healthcare access to for all Americans. I think we are seeing in such stark relief, what this party has come to stand for, covering up for corruption, oligarchy, billionaires, and, at the bottom for some of the most appalling, and sordid behavior you could imagine in this pedophilia and human trafficking, sex trafficking of young girls that we see Trump was almost certainly implicated in through his connection with Epstein. And, it strikes me, Representative Swalwell, that, as the social order breaks down, as this political party completely refuses to stand as a check against this type of corruption, against this type of autocracy, we're going to start to see more manifestations of that disorder. Things like the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which we all will, of course, condemn.
Of course.
And we've seen this, of course, play out in the context of the courts, which are a major focus of our work here. And we watched with great enthusiasm and support as your office and you developed this really novel and I thought creative bill to simply protect these judges by moving the Marshal Service, which protects these judges from physical threats of violence, from the executive branch, which is driving so many of these threats, to the judicial branch where they can protect themselves. And your bill is called the MARSHALS Act, and I fear it's going to be more and more in the news and as a necessary reform. As, for example, today we have another court order saying, no, Donald Trump, you can't fire 10,000 federal workers writ large. Could you tell our viewers a little bit more about the Marshall Act and why, how you're thinking about, protecting judges, protecting other folks that find themselves in harm's way in this very scary era we're finding ourselves in?
So a cornerstone of our democracy is judicial independence. Of course, we have three branches of government, a Congress that checks the presidency and has the power of the purse, the executive branch, which, carries out bills that are passed and appropriated by Congress, and a judiciary that decides on the constitutionality of anything passed by Congress or any action taken by the executive. So it only works if the judiciary is independent. The problem that we have run into and has been exposed and tested by Donald Trump is that our founders and the way our democracy has played out over the years has allowed judicial security to lie with the executive branch. And in any other time, that probably is not going to be a problem. In these times, Donald Trump will routinely attack judges who rule against him, whether it's a Trump-appointed judge or whether it's any other judge. He will attack publicly, either on his social media platforms, in television interviews. He will go after them, and then these judges will receive a high volume of death threats that are aimed at them because Trump has put their names on the radars of some of the worst individuals in America. And so if judges are receiving a high volume of threats and they know that their security is in the hands of the person who is the genesis of the threats, the risk is that they are no longer independent and that their own security creeps into their deliberations. And we can't have that. And so the MARSHALS Act simply moves judicial security into the hands of judges. It would allow the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to appoint the U.S. Marshals who are assigned throughout the country at the district courts and who are in charge of judicial security. It's just one more way to make our judiciary independent as Donald Trump tests them and brings threats their way every single day.
And it's the kind of legislation that would have been a bipartisan bill when I was working in the Senate not that long ago. We worked on a number of judicial security and protection bills when I was there. We passed one into law in response to a horrific attack on a judge. And now, you just can't find that type of bipartisan support because, we can all see that the threats are being directed from the president of the United States, not from, random, aggrieved litigants, as we are traditionally used to seeing. Right, we're in full-fledged political violence, and it's so vital that we have legislation like this. Not only, obviously, this is probably not going to be made law anytime soon, but what it does is it shows the country, it shows your colleagues that this is something that we can do, right? Because this is not something that Congress has thought about for a while. We haven't had to think about this, but this is a power well within your constitutional authority as Congress to protect not only the judges, but also judicial independence writ large, and by extension, the citizens of the country and the Constitution. So that's a little heavy, and I know things are pretty heavy these days. But Representative, I think one of the things I most appreciate about your politics is the levity with which you often carry yourself. I was watching some of your recent TikTok videos. We'll put a link in them. They're terrific. You're wearing a King's hat. You seem super accessible. I think as we're thinking about what average folks can do to resist authoritarianism in this moment, I think obviously the goal of so much of what they're doing, this whole shock and awe campaign, is to intimidate us, to make us feel fear. And this type of mockery and resistance, I think, is just essential in our showing that, like, come on, your power is a joke, and we can together we can mock you and resist you. Can you speak to that a little bit and maybe give some words of encouragement to folks that are feeling that way, especially on the eve of the No Kings rally, which is coming up this Saturday?
Yeah, this Saturday I'll be at a No Kings rally in California. I'm excited to be a part of it. Apparently, there will be up to 2,600 No Kings rallies across the country. It'll be the largest protest ever in the history of the United States, and Republicans are already characterizing it as a hate America rally. But when you have almost 10 million people likely to turn out, you can't call that a hate America rally. That is a big segment of our population who is saying, hell no to these abuses of power, this cruelty, this corruption. But the way I look at it legally, because this is a legal podcast, is that our democracy is essentially a table that sits on top of four legs that keeps it upright. It's a check by Congress against abuses of power. It's a independent judiciary, a free press, and a town square that is full of pissed off, peaceful dissenters. The check by Congress is gone. It was never there for this administration. However, this table of democracy can stand on three legs because we are still seeing, and you just alluded to it, the judiciary is showing its independence. District courts are ruling against the president and slowing down the pace of his corruption and cruelty. The free press, while wobbly, we have still seen people rise to the occasion to cover, the illegal deportations of U.S. citizens, the corruption of the president using his professional office to enrich himself and his family personally. And then, of course, the town squares. We've seen town halls, filled to the brim across the country, and these No Kings rallies continuing to turn out everyday citizens. And so those three legs can hold and get us to the midterms. And so as long as those three legs are there, we can win the midterms, get a majority in Congress, put that fourth leg back in place, and give ourselves the best chance going into 2028 for the next presidential election, to turn the corner on this national nightmare. So that's how I see it. The dark side of that, Alex, is that if we lose the midterms, I fear that the next leg that would fall of the three legs that stand and hold up democracy right now would be the town square. That people would be so demoralized that we lost the midterms, that there's no check in place, that they'd stop showing up to protest, they'd stop showing up to town halls. And when that happens, that's when the president can really ignore court orders because he figures nobody cares and nobody will show up, and that he can continue to go after the press and suppress them and silence them. So winning the midterms is so consequential to making sure that, democracy wins out.
Yeah, we got a big fight ahead. I don't know. I'm a dad. I don't know if you read the book, but we're going on a bear hunt.
Yeah.
Can't go over it. Can't go under it. We're going to have to go through it. So we're going to go through this. Representative Eric Swalwell, thank you so much for everything you're doing, for spending some time with us here today.
Of course. My pleasure.
And friends, thank you so much for joining us here on Legal AF with Court Accountability Action. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It is how we grow this community, how we keep bringing on more wonderful folks like you to dive into rich conversations with amazing leaders like Representative Swalwell. Thanks so much. And until next time, stay mad, stay motivated, stay mighty.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.